Thank you for joining iMeet. This meeting is now being recorded.
There we go. Now we're official. Did someone else join? Okay. So I'm going to send a text message to Bob Motley and just see if he's there. I've just sent it off to him. So why don't we just go ahead and start with introductions. At this point, I think, the only one who's talked to everybody, so I won't introduce myself. But Judd, we'll start with you.
Okay. My name is Judd Mellinger-Blauk, and I'm the director of the Pennsylvania Primary Care Career Center, which is part of the Pennsylvania Association of Community Health Centers. And we're a state-funded nonprofit career center that works to provide referrals. We've tried to make the connection between primary care providers, dentists, dental providers, and behavioral health providers, and mostly fairly qualified health centers, so community health centers all across the state.
Hello there.
So that's what. Hello?
It's Bob Motley.
Hey, Bob. Bob, we're just doing introductions, and
Okay.
Judd Mellinger-Blauk from the Pennsylvania Association of Community Health Centers is just introducing himself.
Great.
So, so anyway, so that we try to make the connection between people who need to hire primary care physicians, dentists, nurse practitioners, PAs, behavioral health clinicians, and so forth, and community health centers, and we do that in a variety of ways. I won't get into all the details, but so that's who I am.
Great. Thank you, Judd. Val?
Sure. Valerie Butel. I am the AmeriCorps Program Director, now out of Baldwin Wallace. I oversee a corps of 40 AmeriCorps members across the state of Ohio that some are taking gap years before they go on to medical school or other professional schools, and some are undergraduates that we're running the HPEC program statewide.
Thank you, Val. Jenna?
Hi, I'm Gina Weisblatt, and I have a couple roles. I've just changed new jobs, so I'm a little confused. First of all, Val is my colleague and partner and has been working with me forever, and she is much more than just AmeriCorps director. She does many, many things with me, and I'm delighted that she's joined us in this process. I'm about to join the faculty at Case Medical School, hopefully back on the tenure track, it looks like. In Family and Community Medicine, I am the director of the Office of Community Inclusivity, Equity, Diversity, and oh God, let's see, the last one, I can't remember. Oh, goodness gracious, this happens to me every time. CEDI. so many words. You know how academics are. So that's my role, my official paid title. And then I am an associate professor at Baldwin Wallace University, where I have an appointment as the co-director for the Center for Research on Health Disparities in Education. And my grants and a lot of my actual work is there. And I'll be starting my research back up at Case and through this office. And I know Larry, because I'm co-director of the Ohio Alliance with Eric Porfelli, who I don't think is on the call, but he's a great colleague, amazing guy who's at Ohio State now and has a very fancy big position. I don't remember what it's called either. Someone else will be able to help out with that. And thank you.
Great, thank you. Lauren?
Hi, I'm Lauren Bowen. I'm the provost at Juniata College, which is a residential liberal arts college in Huntington, Pennsylvania, Central PA. about 1,500 full-time undergraduate students, and for years we've primarily recruited. Many of our students, maybe half of our students, enter as pre-health, and so we have a good track record of placing students in medical school and other health profession schools. And I know Jenna from my past life with John Carroll, and we connected, and I'm friends. I sat with Doug Spots at dinner on Saturday night, Larry, and we talked a little bit about this. So, so anyway, I'm interested in bringing a liberal arts perspective to the work y'all are doing.
Excellent. And you're amazing, too.
Wonderful. Bob?
Hi there, I'm Bob Motley. I'm a family physician, geriatrician by training, but in recent years I've gotten involved with community health, community medicine. I also have a new job as of August. I moved from Lehigh Valley Health Network in Allentown, Pennsylvania to Jefferson, and my two major roles there are working with the Physician Shortage Area Program, along with Howard Rabinowitz, who's directed that program for a number of years, and also the vice chair for the Community Medicine Division in the Department of Family and Community Medicine. So still getting my feet wet.
I hear you.
So that's me.
Excellent.
Great. Thank you, Bob. So let me tell you about the other two who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight. Sarah Ramirez is at Penn State Hershey Department of Family and Community Medicine in Hershey, Pennsylvania. She is Latina, and she is very interested in issues trying to help Latino young folks get into health professions of all kinds. I had a lovely dinner with her about a month ago, and she's very interested in this project, as is her department. So the Department of Family Medicine at Penn State Hershey has relationships with, I believe, something like 21 or 22 colleges across the state, and they have agreed to be the sort of academic anchor, if you like, for the Pennsylvania Alliance, at least at this stage. And Sarah will be their representative. She just couldn't be here this evening. Joe Hines is a family physician at UPMC Altoona Family Medicine Residency Program, and he's also the medical director for the South Central Area Health Education Center. There are either 6 or 7 area health education centers in Pennsylvania, and Joe, in addition to his interest in helping folks from rural communities to get into the health professions, he'll be the conduit to those 7 AHECs. And so if you kind of think about the organizations who are represented in this leadership group, really what we have is a broad section. So from the FQHCs, which are spread out in inner city and rural across the state of Pennsylvania, to the AHECs, which obviously are spread out throughout the state, to, I think, Juniata College. I had a wonderful conversation with Lauren a few months ago and was really impressed by their efforts to that align very well with our efforts to find first generation to college kids and help them be successful in health profession careers. Bob, the program he's picked up at Jefferson is spread out across the state of Pennsylvania, and they have a 30-year track record of recruiting and graduating kids who return to serve rural communities. So what I've really tried to do in this early stage is to make sure that we have, we're not medical school dominated, that we really have a diverse group of people in organizations, and I'm pretty sure because of that, as we continue forward with our conversations, the Pennsylvania Alliance is going to become a very diverse and a statewide organization. Interestingly, because I've been working with Eric and Jenna and Val for the last few years since I first learned about HPAC. HPAC started off as a medical school-based initiative, and it's now growing into the Ohio Alliance, which is beginning to develop relationships with a broader swath of organizations. So we're learning from their experience, and it's great, Jenna and Val, that we can have you as coaches, advisors, and mentors to those of us who are going to begin the Pennsylvania Alliance. So,
Larry, can I just for a hot second, I'm so appreciative of your introduction, but make one just slight modification.
Sure.
Okay, great, thank you. Because I think there's a lot of value in what you had to say, and I just want to say that our efforts actually did end up at a medical school, but we actually started our efforts in a different format much earlier than that. And interestingly enough, I've even seen the outcomes of those efforts 25 plus years later from communities where kids were working on social determinants of health. So we kind of reframed it and reformatted it a few times over, but it has a long, rich history, and we were really lucky when Eric and I came together and were able to create a framework for it at Neomed in a different context. So I just want to add that. So it does work other places. It's not just out of medical school.
Yes, I appreciate that, Jen, and I forgot about you in Minneapolis.
Yeah, and Cleveland State, too, we did it with, that's how we started with John Hay, interestingly enough.
Interesting. And was that Eric who joined?
It was. Please
Hey,
accept
Eric,
my
I was just talking about you.
Yeah, I apologize, guys. We ran into a significant issue, and I just left my dean's office, so I'm able to talk. Sorry about that.
So let me tell you who's on the call. Judd Mellinger-Bloch, who's with the Pennsylvania Association of Community Health Centers, Valerie Butel, who you know, Jenna Weisblatt, who you know, Lauren Bowen, who's the provost at Juniata College, and Bob Motley, who is a family physician at Jefferson Medical College now. And so we just finished introductions, and what I'd really like to say at this point is Eric and Jenna in particular are going to serve as our kind of consultant coaches. And I'm wondering, we've had numerous conversations about the Pennsylvania Alliance, but I'm wondering if Eric, Jenna, there's something you want to say to get our thinking going at this stage?
Well, I'm going to let Jenna lead us, but if she likes. But I just want to first of all thank you all and applaud the fact that you're willing to come together for a pretty ambitious initiative that will probably carry you guys forward for several years. But, you know, with anything like this, it always starts with a few easy steps, and Jenna's a master at mapping out very complicated things in an easy-to-follow step-by-step
Don't listen.
So, and then I just want to say one other thing, which is it's so weird how history has a way of repeating itself. For the colleague that's from Juniata College, I have to share that many years ago when I was a graduate student at Penn State, my wife every day drove over top of the mountain to go work at Juniata College as assistant director for advancement. So nice to hear.
Oh, that's awesome. It's a small world, and Jen and I go way back from when I used to be at John Carroll, so it's funny how we're all interconnected, isn't it?
It really is. I love it.
All right, Jenna, kick us off. It's all you.
Well, so not much to say other than for Eric, I, and Larry, I know for the Ohio Alliance and our efforts, we are all very interested in a basic platform around the ideas of, we've been calling it a citizenship health movement somewhat, but the idea is to, there's four main pillars of it in domain, so to speak. One is that knowledge equity needs to occur, which basically is everybody has a cell phone or they have access for the most part, but do they have access to the internet, and do they have access to the right information? And how does that impact our schools down the line? How does that impact Lauren's, liberal arts students, can she get all the right students from the rural areas? Because do they even have access to knowledge that other kids do? And is that access allowing them to even think about it and dream up ways? So that's one of the things that we are all very interested in doing with this movement. The second area that we're very interested in is using existing assets in context, so not recreating the wheel. If you got something and it's good, let's repurpose it, let's reorganize it, and let's tell a narrative about it that utilizes its capacity contextually to make it sustainable and be open source about it and dynamic. So that's really the second pillar, understanding that context matters. The third is really around personal liberties, that rights and responsibilities go hand in hand, that in this country, we've had some really interesting times in terms of the way people think about things, and it's rocky. But we have a structure, and we have a home and a place. And with that, despite what we think, everyone has rights and everyone has responsibilities. And sometimes we get a little confused about our personal responsibilities, that it's somebody else's responsibility. And so that's really a challenge. And so we are very committed to the idea to helping people find their own passion so that they can make a difference and be somebody in the community. And then the fourth area or domain of the Ohio Alliance work really falls under the ecosystem matters and the idea that social capital and networking is absolutely critical. Understanding how networks come together and how they impact one another and they impact behavior, particularly given the way that exponentially we're growing with knowledge and different kinds of careers and different pathways to do things. Having the freedom to understand that it's really important to keep up with that, to keep up with the networks, and to understand that we have to pass and share that information along in order to be successful. And so it's a really easy way to create a non-equitable situation if we are not cognizant of that. So I guess that theoretically kind of wraps up the direction that why we did the things that we did. Our goals in the effort were around diversifying the pipeline so that we could get more health professionals in the field who came from diverse areas, whether it's rural, low economic, African American, Latino, whatever it is, to be a part of this system, because we know that that's a large part in terms of solving some of the health issues, and with good health leads to success. So we understand that that the involvement of social determinants of health, 70% of our health, all of those things are often even further contextualized and understood by people who come from the environments where they have experienced them, and they can help patients and individuals achieve what they need to when they have similar or like backgrounds. Not that they can't network or borrow value or credibility or anything from other folks, but that certainly helps. So that was one of our really big goals in what we did. The other was spreading community health, getting people to understand that it's not just a doctor, that health is about a heck of a lot more, and that with the change and the shortage of physicians and nurses and everything else, we're rethinking the way we do medicine. We have to have extenders. We see the value of community health workers. We see with infant mortality how it reduces the rates of, where we're failing. We see it across the board. I can give you 100 studies of different things that are happening in community health that are absolutely critical. In addition to the fact that we have to change the way we teach our kids about their health. In Europe, kids go to school, lunch is a course. It's not just shoved down, a piece of pizza and hope you get a soda. It's a lot more than that, and it starts at a very early age. And so Eric and I have been very committed to the notion of education as a goal in the pipeline around health and social determinants of health. And so those are, I guess, a couple of our platforms that we have focused on. We've operationalized those with our 40-person AmeriCorps that do work in the schools, that do work on community health issues. They're all trained as community health workers. We are very big on the technology piece. We're doing a lot with network analysis, networking networks. We're writing a little bit about that. We've used ECHO. Larry went out and learned about it in New Mexico. We've spent a lot of time learning about that. And so I guess that would be, I don't know, I probably talked too much. Eric, did I nail what kind of our vision and the goal and kind of how we've met some of those objectives?
Yeah, absolutely. And so to just underscore a few points, Our aspiration is not to go into communities and fix them, nor to necessarily be the one that brings in all the resources and rely on us. We see the community as, in general, having the vital ingredients it needs to improve its own health, but they oftentimes need some support in a frame in a way. And so for us, it's about meeting the community face to face, eye to eye, and seeing that we both have something to offer in this grand endeavor of advancing health and advancing people from the community and the health professions, rather than old school model. What needs to be done. And so, if this is your view in Pennsylvania, if this is the way you think to move forward, then we've got lots of things in addition that Jenna can share and I can share, and how to go about doing these things. So, any thoughts or reactions based on just the opening framework that Jenna offered around citizenship health?
So
this silent.
This is Larry, and I thought it might be helpful at this stage. This group is very early in forming, and I thought that it might be helpful to ask each person who's on the call, so why'd you say yes? When I talked with you and told you about HPAC and the idea of a Pennsylvania Alliance, why did you say yes, and what are you hoping that you will get out of this, or your organization will get out of this? And I'll just go back through the order. Judd, do you want to start?
Well, I started first. Shouldn't somebody else start? No, just kidding. One of the reasons why I said yes was because you just don't stand in the way of Larry Bauer. You're kind of a force of nature.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah. So no, Larry and I have been talking about this for a while, and every day I'm out there beating the bushes to try to find people to work in underserved communities. And what's very clear is that people who are either from underserved communities or people who have a mission, a heart for mission, whether that's from a religious perspective or just from a deep interpersonal perspective, are the two kinds of people who go to work in underserved areas and stay there. While loan repayment programs and J-1 visa programs are great, they really aren't a long-term answer to access issues in underserved communities. So what's really needed is to encourage young people to take not just medicine or dentistry or whatever, but all kinds of professions that require training and background in science, technology, and math. And in addition, the other thing that made me say yes was in Cleveland last year, looking at and also in Pittsburgh the year before, looking at the poster contest that included HPAC kids, and talking to a group of 4 young African Americans, men from a high school in Cleveland, and their research into violence by law enforcement toward African Americans. And that touched me deeply, honestly. It took a lot of courage for them to stand up and put that poster out there in front of what's basically a majority white group of people. And they were all your students were so eloquent and devoted to what they had studied. And these 4 men in particular were obviously talking about something that had touched their lives directly. And that just really stuck with me. I mean, obviously it's 2 years later, because I think it was in Pittsburgh. Obviously right. It's something that stuck with me and continues to be brought home when I read the news today. So
Thank you for sharing that story. I will pass that on to those young men too. That is like amazing that you brought them up.
Lauren, how about you going next? Did we lose Lauren?
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm interested in Juniata being part of this initiative for a couple of reasons. As I mentioned at the outset, we have historically attracted a critical mass of first-generation students who are interested in health professions, and I want to continue to support that pipeline. Some of them imagine going back to rural communities. Some of them can't for a variety of reasons, many of them financial, and so I want them to have the kind of experiences as undergraduates that allow them to pursue that if they'd like. I'd also like for Juniata to be known as a place who's really good at this sort of thing so that we can attract rural students from outside of Pennsylvania and know that were they to come to us, they could also return to their home communities. So that's a driver for us in terms of shoring up our mission and our identity. And the last thing I would mention, and Jenna talked a good bit about community health, we have a newly passed curricular requirement that every student will be engaged in their local communities in a meaningful way by the time they graduate. And so I'm interested in undergraduates having the opportunity to work alongside community health folks and to help deliver, help deliver not healthcare, but help engage with their communities, whether it's through internships or community-based learning, and for us to create projects that undergraduates can execute in local communities. And this seems like perhaps a way to leverage that in Pennsylvania during the school year, but also for my students in the summer, wherever they happen to be in Pennsylvania.
That's awesome about the requirement. Wow.
Yeah, it is awesome. It passed on the floor of the faculty by amendment, which I think is exciting as an idea. And now we're building the infrastructure to make sure we can deliver. And so, I think this network has really great potential for us to be able to partner with some other schools and some communities to, give that some resonance and some meaning for our students and for the communities from which they come.
Absolutely.
That's wonderful. Bob, how about for you?
So it's interesting. While I was at Lehigh Valley, we were largely an urban, third largest city in Pennsylvania with very strong social determinants and a couple of generations of poverty. And then we took on 3 rural health systems over the course of the next 2.5 years. And as the point person for the community needs assessment, I really got a deep look at those communities. And I tend to be a bit of a lumper than a splitter, and I realize, oh my gosh, if you're talking about underserved populations, it's just a matter of the scale, and while there are some problems more unique to one setting or another, there's a heck of a lot more overlap. I also see a huge need if we are going to transform our health system to that team-based care, then all the sectors, so whether that's the AmeriCorps, the volunteers, social service, sector, high school experiences, because I think they are very formative times for imprinting folks into the helping professions, whether that's being a physician or a social worker or a psychologist or, somebody who's working deep in the community, depending on their skill set. So I'm a believer in terms of not just focusing on a particular part of the workforce, but we need to work together to inform what that should look like and how it can complement our efforts. I think America has a huge problem right now in terms of how its finances, both education and healthcare. The fact that we've had such barriers in Pennsylvania to getting status for community health workers, and at the same time, we've had a hard time getting to that value-based world where a health system could choose to reallocate how it spends its dollars so that we're not addicted to the fee-for-service, making widgets, high-volume types of areas. So we definitely need a proof of concept, and while that's going to take some time, I'm a firm believer that there's no time like now because you can see how the components, when they perform well, they do move the needle. And so we have to make the outcomes or results metrics case, and we also have to support this and know how the pieces fit to make a good business case. So that may sound kind of grand, but primary investment is in people and pipeline, and we should continue to watch both the interactions as we're doing that, as well as what things we're influencing when it comes to people's health.
That was
Thank
great.
You, so let me direct everyone's attention. So I put together a document, and I sent it to everybody yesterday. It's called the Health Profession Affinity Community Alliance in Pennsylvania. I call it Creating Stepping Stones to the American Dream for High School and College Students from Inner City and Rural Communities. And I would appreciate it. I'm by the way, I'm absolutely stealing from Eric and Jenna and Valerie's work and the Ohio Alliance. So I put together, I borrowed whole cloth from their work, the statement about what is the HPAC Pennsylvania Alliance and what are the priorities for that. And I'm hoping everyone may have a copy. Any reactions to that or thoughts about that?
But Larry, I'm sorry, I did not get a chance to look it over yet. I apologize. I'm going to open it up right now while we're talking, so I'll let other people go.
You may have written, I'm not sure if it was you or Eric that wrote this, so it's going to look very, very familiar.
So as folks are digesting it, this is Eric. If you'd like us to talk through the model with you, we can certainly do that. Some of you have, as you mentioned just a minute or two ago, some of you experienced the product of the model, which are great students doing amazing work in the community from the communities they're from. But we can talk you through the model if that would help.
This is Lauren. I think that would be helpful because I think I know where I want us to go, but a little bit more on how to get there would be useful to me.
Okay, Jenna, do you want to do that, or do you want me to do that?
No, sure. Why don't we just do it together? We're a good team. And Val, jump in any time. So what I'll do is I'll kind of give Eric's the better storyteller than I am. He's always more fun. So we'll let Eric he's the storyteller guy. He'll fill in the details. I'll give you kind of the bare bones and the framework. And again, I want to go back to just wrapping this around to the work that we're all doing here, about that this is one example or one model. When this summer I laid out a document, Val was with me, we actually did it together, I found that we had 14 variations of HPAC currently going on in the schools. So it's very contextualized based on the needs of the community and what are the existing assets of those communities, and also based on how we can help funnel the idea or the dream of getting to a place like Juniata or working in a community health center so you can support yourself, et cetera. So I want to frame that. And the other thing I want to do is, Larry, we didn't invite Rob Gilio to this call, but I think he would have been a great person to add on in retrospect now, because I know he is doing a lot of work around this and is very dedicated. He works with Lauren and has worked with me on a bunch of these things. I know he would be in the cause right with us and is doing really amazing stuff with the internet. So I apologize for not making that recommendation earlier on. So please forgive me. But anyways, the model works like this. Essentially, we work with the schools. We ask the kids to identify a health issue within their school. And we send in AmeriCorps members. Initially, sometimes we send in staff to make the connectivity with the school, whether it's a high school, middle school, a college association group, or a college classroom. Even with the medical school, I actually still have M1s and P1s, first-year med students and first-year pharmacy students, a course I used to co-direct, where we do the program with them as well. And essentially, it is based on the idea that they can identify something that's going on in their community. It's very easy for them to do. And it's often a passion that they have, something that is really important to them. So they'll say maybe diabetes, or maybe some of them will say right away gun violence, or maybe some of them will say something along the lines of racism, infrastructural racism, which is, like way people go, like, what is that a health concern? Not really. Of course it is. It's an inequity that's in our system. And so they can name anything from as large and grand scale as those words down to there's no food to eat here. Okay, so it could be anything. And they come up with this idea, and they discuss it, and we discuss it with them, and we help them contextualize it. We help them understand. The AmeriCorps member helps them understand that this is not unusual. There's other people who feel this way, and you're really brave to come up with these ideas and share them and so on and so forth. And then they develop a plan around it, and once they develop to kind of address it, they say, well, how can you make this better? And they come up with some ideas, and they start thinking about it. And we teach them a little bit about social capital, using your networks. How do you do some research on this topic? What can you do to study it a little bit more and come up with maybe the right solution? And so we say, you got to go to the community. You got to talk to people in the community. You got to find out what they think. Do they think this is an issue, or is this just something that you think is an issue? And who is your community, and what does that look like? And why do you consider that your community? And why is that important? And what are our responsibilities towards our community? So we kind of, in a nutshell, do fun things, but we play with those ideas. We bring in mentors. We bring in different people, all existing assets. I'm not paying these people to do these. Other than the AmeriCorps members, they receive their stipend, et cetera, but they essentially take a vow of poverty for the year. So they develop this idea with the kids. It really has to be the kid-driven. It has to be the college student. It has to be the eighth grader or the medical student, or it doesn't work. Then they enact this plan that they do, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It really doesn't matter. Sometimes they'll have a video that has 5,000 hits, and they're speaking in lots of places, and Eric can tell a great story about that. Or sometimes they'll come up with an idea to do something at this homeless shelter, and they realize that this was really contrived, and it was just like something that they thought they should do, and it really wasn't from their heart. And they think about it, and they reflect a little metacognition, and they're able to recognize, in the next step, which is assessing, that maybe that wasn't the best idea. So we encourage them to assess, to think about it. Did this work? Did it not? How did you evaluate it? What could you do better? What can you do next time? Did this make a difference? Did it meet your goal? Did it meet your community's goal? Did it advance you individually? Did it advance your family? The ecological model, did it advance the health of the community? Because that's where life and health success come together, right? And then they share it out. We have them either share it we have a big event called Scholars Day, but we've had many what we call mini Scholars Days, where we've done one at University Hospitals, for example, in the atrium. We've done it at Metro Hospital. We did it at Art Gallery. We've done it many, many places. And sometimes their sharing is a big, giant community run. Eric can tell you about one that was 5K around a railroad track with these very rural communities that had never seen anything like it. So those are the basic steps. It's the ideas model. And Eric, why don't you kind of you're very good at telling the stories, better than me.
Okay, so here we go. So imagine you've got a group of kids in rural town in Ohio, and they're surrounded by farmland, and believe it or not, they identify food insecurity as their challenge, because there's many people that live in this small town that can't afford to buy and consume the healthy vegetables that they and their community help grow in the fields around them. So they come upon, and a couple of the students were in biology class at the time, and the biology teacher had a little aquaponics set up where you have a fish tank, have fish in it, and feed the fish, and the fish produce waste, and that water then feeds through a bed of plants, and the water nourishes the plants, and then it recycles back clean water into the fish tank. It's a happy little living system. And so they said, well, what if we raised money to build a full-scale aquaponics station on our high school campus, and not only teach K-12 education about the science of agriculture, which is the whole basis for their town, and also actually feed people in the process with healthy vegetables and fish, because those are both the products of aquaponics. And so they then set about to develop the concept by recruiting some volunteers to help design an aquaponics station. They then created a little bit of a booth, and they went to local festivals to present their idea and to raise money. They did pancake breakfasts and spaghetti dinners, and about a year into the project, they invited Jenna and I to a meeting where they were going to present their progress, and they created this really cool PowerPoint slide, and the teacher let us come in during the middle of the school day so the kids could present. They had this beautiful slide deck that showed a mock-up of the aquaponics station, how it was going to be on their high school campus. And about halfway through, they presented the budget. And I think it was at that point that I figured it out. Probably Jenna figured it out sooner. But we realized in that moment that they were actually pitching us to pay for this aquaponics station. They thought we had all the money to pay for it.
It's hilarious.
And I'm hitting Jenna under the table like they're pitching us. Oh
my God, it's hilarious.
Like, what are we going to say to these people, these kids, because their hearts were really into this thing. And so they then reported that they had raised $5,000, and all they needed now was the remainder. And I look at the spreadsheet. Jenna's looking at the spreadsheet and on the screen, and lo and behold, the whole project's going to cost like $100,000, and they've raised $5,000. And then I'm thinking, oh my goodness, we don't have $95,000 to give these kids. And then naturally, Jenna and I started leaning into existing assets and how they could buy a piece of equipment for the aquaponics station and maybe make it a part of their booth so they could show people in the community what they had purchased already and build momentum. And the students took our feedback very positively, but you could tell they were disappointed. And so when we left, we touched base with our AmeriCorps member. Her name's Anita, and as it turns out, Anita is one of these kinds of people that she is just tenacious. She never gives up, and when she wants to do something, she goes after it. And so we explained to her how we, tried to give the students some positive feedback, but they were disappointed. And so we left thinking, they're going to go do some more spaghetti dinners and such. But instead, they partnered with Anita, their AmeriCorps member, and they decided to pursue grant funding on their own, this group with Anita, and their community, and they ended up writing a proposal to State Farm, the insurance company, and State Farm gives out grants to youth every year. And Anita, being as bold and as bright as she is with the students, they decided to pitch State Farm for $100,000, and they got it. And so, in the end, I'll never forget getting to go to the high school the day that State Farm showed up with the check, and they invited their local congressman. They invited all the parents. The school personnel were there. The kids were there, and to see the pride in these kids' eyes as they received this check in front of their whole community to basically build a full-scale aquaponics station in this little old Manaway town. Manaway is the name of it, and then after they got the money, they learned the hard way what it really means to get a grant, and they struggled through the implementation phase because it's not just the money, it's the contractors, and it's the school district, and it's a variety of things that go on from there. And so if you can just think about all the naturalistic learning that took place, that had you told these kids at the outset, we're setting you down to learn how to write grants, they would have ran away from us. But when that became an instrument for them to achieve their dream, and then when they had to work through all the zoning issues and the other issues that come with constructing a building, and we would sat them down at the front end and said, we're going to teach you all about zoning today, again, they would have ran away. But when it's part of their dream, when they and their community get to construct, understand the problem, define the problem, and define the solution, they will learn whatever it takes. And so in the end, our program is clearly about community health. It's about meeting communities where they are and supporting them in their health journey and supporting kids into things that that they never would have dreamt of, like building an aquaponics station or going to college. And then seeing that happen, it really is transformative. So that's a story. There's so many we could tell. I'm sure Val could tell 20 more than I could.
That was great. Thank you, Eric. He's really great at sharing what we see. Thank you. Larry, I hope that helps.
Yeah, I think so. So I'll turn back to the group, and I guess I'll ask the follow-up question. So when I first approached each of you, and also Joe and Sarah, who will get to hear this recorded conversation. It was just me pitching an idea. Based on what you've just heard, do you think you've made the right decision? Is this, I'll put people on the spot, is this something you want to, you still want to pursue?
This is Lauren. I would say absolutely. I mean, I think everything Jenna and Eric have said, this vision for community health and meeting communities where they are and partnering with them is everything I want to be involved in, and what I think liberal and higher education ultimately ought to be about. And so figuring out how to do it, how to deploy, whether it's, well, in my case, college students to be in partnership with communities is, it's really exciting for me. So, yeah, I'm in.
Cool.
Yeah, Larry, this is Judd. There's no doubt. I mean, we need a Gina in Pennsylvania, though.
Oh my goodness!
That kind of energy.
Thank you.
So, so no doubt that we're in, and looking forward to making a lot of contacts with community health centers and all the other people that I come in contact with. To once we get this kind of, once we get this a little better defined and so forth, making contacts with them to say, it's time for you to get on board.
Cool. Bob, you still in?
So my mind's kind of racing. Part of the challenge is the implementation and the partnerships. Some of this is a local phenomenon in health systems, at least in my little limited experience. So they're willing, if you can do anything with soft money, if you can get a philanthropist or a grant, go to it. The challenge is when, things get lean, and how do you hardwire that to the chassis? And I can think that both, a health system like Lehigh Valley and at Jefferson, there are good reasons for them to want to create partnerships for the things that feed either their educational programs or at the other end, residency training or nurse practitioner training that might serve and call to people from underserved areas. And there are some programs like Bridging the Gaps and some other things that for med students that are already focused on that. And so how do we knit some of that together? One of the other, I like the concept. I think getting ideas on paper, we have a great case study here. And so, how do you figure out on how to build on their learning? I'm always humbled by, if you've seen one community, you've seen one community, and there's probably components you would need in any given community to step up or to be able to draw on some central resource. But I think the concept, certainly worth further exploration, because I think if we all just go off in our own little silos, not much is likely to happen.
So, Bob, you raise a really good point, and I'll comment on that. So I've talked to each of the medical schools in Pennsylvania, from LECOM to PCOM to Commonwealth to Pitt. I've talked to all of them, to people in leadership roles in the schools. They all have what they call pipeline programs, and some of them are better than others, and some of them are just sort of, come on our campus and shadow our docs for 2 weeks, and that serves as a pipeline program. But there's all kinds, and I think the nurses have things, I think the dentists have things, I think the PA, I think there's a lot of those things out there. What I like about the HPAC is, just as Jenna said earlier, there's 14 different variations on a theme. This is a very flexible model, and I think what will happen in Pennsylvania is, as this leadership group begins to move forward with its planning, others will step forward and say, we want to be a part of this. Some others whom we invite will say, no, we're already doing that. We don't need to add on. But I think there will be a great interest. And the other thing, and I've said this to both Eric and Jenna in the past, I think in terms of the support for this, whenever I present to the business community and I tell them the kind of things the FMEC is doing to improve the health of communities, and I mention HPAC, the business community invariably wants to go back to HPAC because they know that there are bright young people in inner city and rural communities who aren't getting a shot at the American dream, and they need them in a full employment economy. They are desperate for people to move along. So I think there's a great, call it a potential network of support for this. And I think the key thing and the reason why I wanted to have this call tonight is to just begin the process of dialogue about how this can move forward. And I agree with your comment that we need a Jenna in Pennsylvania. And the good news is Jenna and Eric have agreed to be consultants, advisors to this project. The FMEC is committed to this happening. We don't have a blueprint. We're going to develop one working together. But I think as we get this going, the other folks, and Lauren, I'm so impressed by your college and your vision for your college, and I have to believe that there are other folks like you at colleges across the state of Pennsylvania who, when they hear about this, will want to get involved. So I think this is a very helpful first beginning. I do want to point out in the document that I sent to you that in addition to the priorities, which I think is a nice summary for those not familiar with HPAC, in the organizational infrastructure, the first element is the Leadership Council, which is this group. And we're saying 5 to 7, so it doesn't get too unmanageable. It probably could be a little bit bigger, but I think we need a relatively small group to begin talking it through. I do think the idea of an advisory group in each marketplace to identify stakeholder organizations, that's potentially where support and funding can come from. And in the coming year, the FMEC is willing to organize what I call public awareness events, one in the West, one in Central, and one in Eastern Pennsylvania, to invite leaders from stakeholder organizations to hear about this. One of the nice things that the Pennsylvania Alliance will have going for it is you already have proof of concept. Just hearing Eric's story and hearing about the 1,000 students who show up at NeoMed Scholars Day last April and the 150 who showed up here in Dayton last spring. It's not like you're selling vaporware. This is something that works. It has a track record. It's having impact. So I think that we have a great chance. I did want to comment on the issue of organizational support. So right now the FMEC is willing to be call it the home base for this. The FMEC is the home base for the Ohio Alliance. At some point going forward, the leadership group of the Pennsylvania Alliance may decide, just like the Ohio Alliance could decide to form its own 501c3, which would be absolutely fine. That I would take as a sign of success, that the organization is maturing and the leadership group is feeling capable of implementing its own 501c3. So I wanted to mention that to the group. And one of the first questions I'd like to ask is, are there other, you mentioned Bob Giglio, and I'll get a hold of Bob, Jenna. Are there other organizations, other people that you would like to develop, whether they become part of the leadership group or they just become aware of what we're doing? I'm wondering if the group has any thoughts about that.
So Larry, this is Bob, and I have to defer to others who may have more direct contact, but there's a FQHC group called Primary Health Network, and they operate, I think, some 47 FQHCs in central western Pennsylvania and portions of Ohio. I've met their leadership, and they're a very interesting care delivery, administrative, and business model. And I think their leadership has fire in their belly, and I think because they are so broadly represented, I think they could be very effective. Now, if other people have experience with them and say, gosh, they're jerks, which was not my experience, I would defer to them because I've only had one meeting with their leadership. But I'd like to throw it out there because they're clearly in it, and they're at scale at this point, which I think is encouraging for a lot of communities.
Yeah,
Judd?
Bob, this is Judd. Primary Health Network, definitely not jerks. You're right. They're across over almost 25 counties in Pennsylvania. They have about 45 to 50 sites. Their CMO is a guy named George Garrow, who's actually a HEMONC by training, but he's a graduate of Penn State College of Medicine in Hershey. Great guy, just one of my favorite docs. So I think they're a really good group to work with. And I also noticed you had somebody in the document from Pennsylvania Osteopathic Medical Association, PCOM. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Harry Morris is the chair of family medicine there. I've known Harry for many years, and they do probably one of the best jobs at least in the osteopathic world, and for sure in the medical school world in Pennsylvania, in terms of attracting kids from rural communities and graduating them to family medicine and primary care and returning to rural communities. So I talked with Harry. He couldn't be here tonight, but he is interested.
Great. Well, one of their graduates, who's also a graduate of Juniata, is a guy named John Bulger, who's now the Chief Medical Officer for Geisinger Health Plan in, of course, rural Pennsylvania. And John might be very interested in being involved in this as well as Primary Health Network. So I'd be happy to make that contact.
Cool. Other thoughts? So, Lauren, I was wondering, are there any other of the colleges spread out in the state that you think might have a special interest in this like you do?
That's a fair question. I was thinking about it when you asked it. I don't know off the top of my head, but I would be happy to sort that out along with my health professions advisor, who she's more likely to know the other schools that are really plugged in, based on her network. So if you give me until our next conversation, I think we should identify a couple of other colleges that might want to engage.
Great.
So Lauren, this is go ahead, Eric.
Go ahead.
Okay, this is Bob. Lauren, I haven't had a chance to meet your health professions leader for Juniata, but I think I will be soon. I think November 9th. In fact, right before I head off to the FMEC annual meeting, we're having a meeting of the Physician Shortage Area Program feeder colleges. I think there are 6 or 7 of them across the state. Juniata is one of them. And I would love, I think that's a difficult, very time-pressured meeting because it's largely to talk about the candidate applicants for this year's medical college admissions. But it would be an opportunity to meet and to at least throw an idea out and see if there's any traction. But I would love to have a follow-up either with you and or other members of your leadership, since that's
Sure.
that's a relationship that already exists. I also know Dr. Morris, and I think a lot of him in terms of his building in quality and the commitment, the cultural commitment to at least the primary care aspects of the pipeline.
Awesome. I will follow up with, her name's Mandy Siglin, and encourage her to, we'll figure out how to get you two connected, Bob, on the 9th of November.
Cool. So as people think of others, I think it's helpful to begin to develop what Jenna talks about, those social networks of connection, and things have a way of evolving over time. So if you think of somebody and you want to throw their hat or their organization's hat in the ring, if you just would send an email message, that would be great. I have here talk about developing a timetable for the first year implementation. I think that's probably a little ambitious for our call tonight, since we are past an hour already. But I would like to say this: for those who are at the FMEC meeting in Westchester, we're going to have an HPAC breakfast on Saturday morning. And that will be an opportunity for Eric and Jenna, who will be there, and Val, who will be there, and others. And we will invite people who are coming to the meeting. And I think there's a number of residency directors and others who may be very interested. Oh, and I should point out, actually, that HPAC is actually alive and running in Pennsylvania. Grant Phillips got all excited. He's a family doc at Washington Hospital. He got all excited after he met some of the students in Pittsburgh, and he came back to his community, and he got his residents doing their community medicine experience out into one of the local high schools. As a matter of fact, Eric, was it the high school that you went to?
No, I was actually born in that community.
Oh, you were. That was it. Okay, I knew there was a connection.
Yeah.
So this year, Grant is bringing. They have one student. There were two, but one can't come. But they're coming to present their project that they've been working on. So we'll have.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
Yep, we have our first Pennsylvania HPAC presentation during the poster session. I will also mention, and you can put it on your calendars now, the FMEC 2019 meeting will be in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. It will be October 31st through November 3rd. And I'd like to suggest that we use that as a sort of anchor event to think about what we might do in the coming months that would build up. It would be nice to get some of your college students, Lauren, or some of the other high school students to be able to come and participate in the meeting. And we can talk about that, taking advantage of that it's going to be in Pennsylvania the first year would be a good idea.
That's great. And gives us plenty of time to plan. That's awesome.
Yes. So are there other meetings in Pennsylvania in the coming year that we should be mindful of, because we could have some member of the leadership group make a presentation there in terms of, gaining some notoriety for this project?
Definitely PAFP meetings, Pennsylvania Academy of Family Practice. That Molly Talley will be very happy to help us get into a PAFP meeting.
How about,
and
I was going to say, don't you guys have a meeting?
Yeah, we have I was just going to suggest that the Pennsylvania Association of Community Health Centers meeting would also be in the same place in Lancaster, but about a month before yours. Here, it's more like 2 or 3 weeks, but that would be perfect. That that would be a good place. There's actually also a spring meeting, but it's more policy driven and more lobbying driven in Harrisburg, but I'm not sure that's the right venue for this.
Okay.
We can look into it, but the other meetings would be there's also a nurse practitioner student symposium that the Pennsylvania Coalition of Nurse Practitioners holds every let's see, I think it's March in State College. That might be an interesting place to it won't be a big crowd though, but there's a lot of training programs come to that, so a lot of faculty comes. So that might be interesting. Yeah, Pennsylvania Medical Society meets they meet this weekend in Hershey, so they're kind of out.
Right. So, Lauren, do the Pennsylvania colleges have some kind of a meeting or?
Not really. There's different consortia within Pennsylvania. There's so many colleges in Pennsylvania, varying sizes, but there occasionally, are gatherings for the presidents or the provost. Let me find out what there might be more along these lines. So give me until our next conversation some time to figure out what the right networks might be.
Cool.
Larry?
So I know, yeah, go ahead.
I'm thinking that maybe to frame a little bit for people in terms of stakeholders and next steps, it might be useful just to outline a few of the typical categories of stakeholders that we see across a diversity of communities in Ohio, just to help people orient their thinking towards other partners. Would that be okay?
Yes, please.
Okay. So, Jenna, I'm just going to kind of outline very briefly the hub and spoke model and how it ties to, and then just please chime in. So, in terms of Ohio, basically, the program itself is usually based out of a local college or university that ties to one, if not multiple, K-12 school buildings and even school districts. And so then that educational alliance helps focus students on the educational pathway from their local community to their local college or university, and that's one of the recruitment pipeline elements of the program. But then within the community, there's usually a tie to either community health agencies or nonprofits in general that have some interest in advancing the community and maybe specifically around health. And so it could be a public entity, like a governmental entity, like a public health department, but it could also be any number of nonprofits. This is a vital ingredient of the program in that it has a lot of flexibility at the local level. This is not a paint-by-numbers program, which is both good and bad, because there are some people that love paint-by-numbers programs. They follow, steps A, B, C, and D, and they get a beautiful portrait that looks the same no matter who paints it. But in our program, no, there's a lot of flexibility which allows it to evolve into being, what did Jenna say, 12 or 14 different variants across various communities. So the other thing that you would look at maybe is health systems. So Jenna works in a health system. We have health system partners, like, for example, Dayton Children's Hospital. The person who's responsible for community health benefit is a vital partner and actually helps pay for AmeriCorps members because she sees this as both a workforce initiative and as a community health benefit initiative. So basically you've got a university, you've got one or more schools involved, local K-12 schools, and then you have nonprofits, and then you have health systems. Is there anybody else in terms of a category, Jenna, that comes to mind?
I think that the only other thing I would add is just these latent networks that are around. So they're not necessarily identified groups. They're small, teeny tiny local, like the Kiwanis or something like that, that are just like they're part of a national network, but they're small in a particular community. Or they're Mrs. Johnson, who takes the kids in from the community every Thursday and teaches, sewing, which is crazy on 116th Street, which everyone's like, oh my God, you'll get shot if you get, make one move there. So there's lots of latent networks with government, city, recreation centers, et cetera, that we have uncovered throughout the process, and it's just keeping your eyes open. And networks online that have also been great, and some that have fooled us. You know, we had the tooth fairies. Remember, Eric?
Yeah. And so let me just share something related to what Jenna is saying now. So when we started the program, it was literally Jenna reaching out to a high school principal that she was really close to and telling this principal, we've got this wild new idea. We don't know if it's going to work. Are you willing to try it out? And the principal's response is, of course, it's you, Jenna. I'm going to do it. And that principal allowed us to play and experiment and evolve the program pretty rapidly over the course of just a couple of years. But Jenna literally started with her and I working together in 3 high schools in the city of Cleveland, serving 20 kids in the first year. That's how we started. But she had all these latent networks. She's lived in Cleveland basically her whole life almost. So she knew all the networks and was able to connect into them. So you're right, you need a Jenna, but it's not a Jenna necessarily at the statewide level. You need a Jenna within your first community that you want to work with, and you want to know who's that person that's connected to everybody else, to be a key stakeholder that buys in, and then you ask that person to connect you through the latent network in a way that stitches the resources together around a particular high school.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it. And Larry, you're an amazing connector. Like, you brought all this together. And, I mean, each one of you, I'm sure, have amazing networks. And so it's just like you never know who's going to, be there and be able to help you out. And you're really surprised sometimes. Somebody with what seems like no resources has amazing resources.
So as Larry's focusing you on who do you know at the leadership level across the state, I would also encourage you to start thinking through what is the very best community to start this in. It would be the community where you have strong ties already, but that necessarily isn't doing this or is doing something maybe close to this but not exactly this with kids. And that's another area of focus, is on this ideal community to start the initiative. And then finally, Jenna will say one other thing. By doing it that way, it allows you to generate small, quick wins that you leverage into bigger and bigger wins that you start then presenting in all these meetings that you were referring to earlier.
That's the key. Bob, I think it was you. It's really crazy. You're right. Grant money dries up, people run away. Eric and I have found Dynamic Leader. These are the 2 things we always say about these programs. They're usually run by Dynamic Leader or they're run by grant dollars. And not that either one of us are, just amazing leaders, but I wouldn't call us that. I think it's more the structure of how it came about. And just the whole idea of using the existing assets, building capacity from them contextually, and keeping an open system for sustainability. It's a theoretical construct that actually plays out really nicely. And so when you have little wins and you can knit together 1 or 2, people are more likely to go, oh, yeah, I heard of that. Oh, okay, cool. And so it becomes embedded and entrenched. And when that happens, then it becomes a story. And once it's a story, people repeat stories, even though it's an N of 1. And it's quite amazing how resources flow as a result. And I'll shut up now, but thank you.
Yeah, and then this is Eric again. I'll just add one more thing. Remember we said we started with 20 kids in 3 schools, and it was literally Jenna going from school to school. And by year 5 of our work, we were at 1,000 kids across 100 schools. But that can sound like daunting and imposing, and it is when you step back and look at how fast we grew. But remember, it just started in basically one community, and it just grew like mad as a consequence. But the other part of it was that it was because so much of it relied on existing assets, and a real pivot point for us was AmeriCorps, because it multiplied our Army by a huge number of people really in the space of overnight.
Can I ask you a quick question about that? So in using AmeriCorps folks, did you did that incrementally or more radically, where you had, it sounds like you did it overnight, where you had a whole cadre of AmeriCorps Vista folks who distributed throughout Ohio or concentrated in?
Lauren, that's a great. You make it sound like we actually thought about this really long and hard. Okay, so this is what happened. I'm just going to tell you. It was like throwing paint up. We had the model, we had the design. We kicked the grant in. There's a process you go through. I mean, we did the dance. I mean, we danced and danced and danced, okay? We were at the many balls to get to where we were. But we find out, like, basically in July, they're going to fund us. But we don't know for sure. And then we find out, okay, yeah, we're going to fund you for sure. Well, we find out we're being funded for sure July 30th. Well, the course is supposed to start August 1st, okay? So... we hired 20 full-time people in 11 days. And it was chaotic that first year. Our director, we ended up going through two. It was really chaotic. But I will tell you this, the program and the structure holds its own. It allows for people to take it and contextually develop it. So we started out just in our local areas. We said, look, we want each AmeriCorps member, they were all full-time, to do 5 HPACs. We had them do their own HPAC project. We gave them a little bit of training. And we sent them out in the field. Then we observed, and then we just kept on correcting and reiterating and failing and learning from those mistakes and getting a little bit better from time to time. And then we became more intentional as we went through the process, as we talked about it, as we saw the results, as we evaluated, and so on and so forth. So when you start out, wherever you guys end up starting out, you, like Eric said, you might want to test it out with one community. And you work in that community, you do it for, 6 months. You could start in the spring at Juniata. You could just start up a HPAC there. We could help you get started and roll with it and have your kind of test group, and that would be good for your grant process anyways. And then you go forward with the regular group after that. And like Larry said, Eric and I and Val, and we have a whole team of people who are totally happy to share kind of process and lessons, and gosh, you'll come up with your own. Honestly, you'll teach us stuff quick enough.
And to Jenna's point, AmeriCorps running the program in a community is just one model. So we have another high school in Marietta, Ohio, where really, it's run by a teacher, in her classroom. And she's a really special teacher, but she pretty much does it, and her name's Kim. So.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks.
So the other thing that everyone should know is the FMEC is contracting with Jenna's team at Baldwin Wallace, and Val is going to be working part-time to provide support to help us get organized. I mean, she's got such extensive experience, and now she's just completed her master's degree. So she's got all this free time. Which
Thank you.
She can invest.
And I'll just say it, and I know I'm biased, but Val is an absolute rock star. Jenna mentioned that we had to go through at least one director before we had a stable core, and Val was our second director, and she stepped in year 2 as one of our original AmeriCorps members, and she's been with us ever since.
Thank you, Eric.
Awesome.
So the other thing I'm going to be doing is I've had conversations with people in the Pittsburgh area. It's a long story how I got these connections. I'm going to submit to them this week small proposals to them for startup funding for this. I've pitched the idea to them. They were interested. And I won't mention the name of the organization just yet because I'm not sure how these proposals are going to be received, even though they said they would look at them. But I'm going to start one way or the other finding some startup funding for the Pennsylvania Alliance, and that will pay for some of Val's time, and it'll pay for some of the other things that I've listed on the document here. We will, over time, find people in Pennsylvania, and it won't be me. I'm juggling a gazillion things, but there'll be people in Pennsylvania, perhaps at one of your organizations, who knows, who can step into these roles, and so local leadership for the Pennsylvania Alliance will develop. That'll take a little time, that'll take some funding, but that's kind of the plan. So I think that's probably enough for this evening. Are there any other questions, comments, concerns?
No, this is all very exciting. I look forward to the next step.
Cool. So I'm going to try to set up monthly phone calls so we can get on a schedule. I want to get Sarah and Harry and Joe Hines in. They will get to hear the recording, and we will begin to move things.
Larry, did we lose you?
If his recording ran out here. Well, it's nice to talk to everybody. I think he's probably done anyways, and we look forward to the next meeting.
Okay. Take care, all.
Sounds great. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, be well.